looking for a brand new middle grade Christian fantasy series to dive into? Well, I've got one to share with you today. You guys might remember I made a book news video a little while ago where I was talking about some of the books that I was looking forward to have come out so that I could read them. And one of the ones I mentioned was The Sacred Scales by Bryan Davis. And to my excitement, it has finally come out. I had already pre-ordered it, and it came the day after it released, and I had read it by the next day. Now, to be fair, it is middle grade fiction, so it was a bit of an easier read, but I have read longer books in one day before. But today, I would like to share with you my review of the first book in this brand new series by Bryan Davis, and let you know if you should check it out. So this book, The Sacred Scales by Bryan Davis, is the first in his brand new Christian fantasy series for middle schoolers called the Dragons of Camelot series. Now, technically, this is a prequel series to his long-running Dragons in Our Midst series that is technically 3 or now 4 series. The original series was 4 books and called Dragons in Our Midst, and then he had a sequel series called Oracles of Fire, which was also 4 books. Then he had another sequel series called Children of the Bard that was another 4 books. And now we are getting a prequel series called Dragons of Starlight. You guys might remember that I've mentioned this series a couple times, and I did a video where I rank every book in the series, although of course now that video is outdated because we get a new one. But this series is one of my absolute all-time favorites. As a kid, I loved them. Technically, the original 12 books were young adult fiction, not middle grade fiction. So this book is geared slightly toward a younger audience, but I was still excited to read it because Bryan Davis is fantastic at complex world building and creating a rich, immersive experience with fun, engaging characters and moral depth. And this world in particular, this series, is incredibly special to me and one of my all-time favorite series. The last book in the series was published 10 years ago, and so after 10 years, we're finally getting a prequel series. The concern is, okay, we've had a long-running 12-book series that ended 10 years ago. Do we really need a prequel series? Especially since throughout the Dragons in Our Midst and Oracles of Fire and Children of the Bard books, we get a ton of flashbacks throughout history, which I love and I think is so fun and pulled off really, really well, and especially in the book Eye of the Oracle. And so this prequel series takes place during the days of King Arthur, so medieval fantasy times, and explores King Arthur and the villainous Morgan and Sir Devon and Merlin and Sir Barlow and all of these characters as they grapple with the good and evil dragons and trying to figure out what to do during this war between humans and dragons. The question is, do we really need a series based during this time period, 10 years after the last book's release, when we've already gotten a ton of flashbacks during this time period? Is this going to be contradictory? Is this going to be unnecessary? Is this going to detract from the series as a whole? That is a legitimate concern, but I am very, very excited to say that no. Surprisingly, not only does not take away from the series, I think it enhances the series and the world. I did not notice any contradictions between what he'd written 10 plus years ago and what he's written now for the same time period. And I have read the original series multiple times, and I love a good, complex history and timeline. And so I was definitely paying attention to see if we'd get any contradictions. I personally didn't notice any. So I'd put that as a huge plus for this book and for the start of this new prequel series. And so what I was really surprised by was how much of a story there was to tell that wasn't contradictory and actually enhanced the world building and enhanced the fuller story of what is going on in these books. But at the same time, also felt approachable and easy to understand for someone just entering into the world. Now, obviously, I'm not that person. I already know about the war between man and dragons and Morgan's long-running history and the complexities of what it means to be an Oracle of Fire and what the Candlestone is and who Clefspear and Hartana and the Ocasia and all of these. I already know about all these concepts and characters. But to my surprise, Bryan Davis did an excellent job of making this book feel approachable for someone who is just entering into the world. And so I'd actually say that this prequel series would be a fantastic place to start if you're in middle school or if you're looking for middle grade fiction that is Christian fantasy, because this is a fantastic place to enter into a rich and amazing world that sets you off on a journey. Once you finish this series, which will have 4 books, then you've got 12 more books to read that are all amazing and only get better, especially for the Oracles of Fire series. That one's my favorite still. And so for old fans of the series, I think that this is still worth a read. For brand new readers that haven't tried out the series, I think it's worth a read and surprisingly satisfies both camps well. For other positives for the book, the plot was engaging. I enjoyed the characters and their dynamics. Everything was coherent and logical and felt like a standalone book, but while also setting up a 4-book series and being a part of a much larger book series. I think it is very, very well geared towards the Christian fantasy middle grade audience. There are some fun, long-running jokes that I think will be appreciated. The 2 young characters are relatable and fun and engaging. There is a good amount of moral depth while also being engaging and easily approachable for that audience. And so I think it is worth checking out. In terms of negatives, there's 2 things in particular that I didn't exactly love, but I think that is mostly due to the fact that I'm not at all a part of this target audience. So the first thing is some of the dialogue was very expositional, and that kind of took me out of the story, where I'm like, the dialogue doesn't feel as natural as I'm used to with some of his other books, and felt a bit more exposition heavy. But I think that that is not due to lack of skill for Bryan Davis, and it is more because of the fact that he is writing towards a middle grade audience. And so for that audience, I think it makes perfect sense and make it more enjoyable and understandable for them. The other thing is I would have loved if we went a little slower. It was a little fast-paced, especially at some of the really emotional moments and really tense moments. Things kind of went fairly fast-paced. And if you've read the Creativity Stone series, my own book series, then you'll know that I love dwelling in some of the emotion, not sitting there where it gets boring, but really grappling with all of the emotional and intense depth as we're moving forward with the action and the plot. And for this series, it felt a little lighter on some of the intensity and emotional depth that I personally love. But I would also chalk that up to the fact that this is geared towards a middle grade audience. And so if you're in middle school, I think this is perfect for you. If your kid is in middle school, I think this is a perfect series for them to check out. But I'll say for me, because I'm not in that target audience, I did find a couple things where I was like, well, if this was written for me, it would probably look a little different. That is not to say that it is not good, because it is still excellent. And that is not to say that the writing is inferior. It is just written towards a different audience. And so I wouldn't say that this is my favorite book in the larger series, but I also wouldn't place it as the worst book in the series. I think that it is a solid addition to a series that ended 10 years ago, and a prequel that would have felt unnecessary, but somehow richly enhances the world, and for new readers acts as an epic introduction into a absolutely incredible series that should be checked out. For longtime fans of the series, it is like greeting old friends. It was great seeing Sir Barlow again, and Clefspear, and Hartana, and the Ocasia, and even some of our more villainous characters like Morgan and of course the infamous Sir Devon. Also, I've heard that in one of the upcoming books in this series, we are going to see Alam again, which my favorite character. Very excited about that. It would be worth buying this series just to see Alam again because he's awesome. So I'm excited for that in the upcoming books, in whatever upcoming book that occurs in. But until then, The Sacred Scales is a fantastic book that you should check out, especially if you are a longtime fan of the series or if you are a middle schooler or have a middle school kid that is looking for some epic Christian fantasy that has moral depth, but also lots of great action, fun storytelling, epic world building with knights and dragons and crazy powers, and so much more. What do you think? Are you gonna check this book out? Let me know in the comments.